that same talent that he brought his son with him, and Aiden Kimberlin, real tall, nice player for Allen Bulldogs. Of course, Cass Shipley had a big performance in that one when Woodward just, despite being there in the first half, just couldn't close it kind of in that second half. That was the big issue with that, but they were supposed to play Clinton. You know, we talked about the delays, supposed to play Clinton out of that tournament due to that weather, could not play them. That's going to be rescheduled. So I haven't seen an official date on that. We talked about it a little bit last week during the coaches show. Once we hear that, we'll get that to you, but that would be a game where Woodward will host Clinton. And so it kind of created a weird bye week almost for the Boomers, where they didn't have anything last week because they weren't scheduled to play anything on Friday to begin with.
Well, the funny thing about that is that game that we were supposed to have versus Clinton was a rescheduled game already, and so then you have to
been flipped essentially, yeah.
So you have to reschedule that again for the third time, and it just creates a whole lot of chaos. And then, like you said, it had all that winter weather and slick spots, and man, a whole lot of, I'd say, not so fun, but fun weather in a way.
And it's still chilly today, but they've braced the cold, we braced the cold, ready to go for this one. And, you know, after this one in Dakota, you'll get a good test in Hooker tonight from both sides, and we'll get to that a little bit later. But, you know, this is a prep now to get you ready for the Buckle the Wee Belt Tournament Kingfisher. It's coming up on Thursday. That's going to be a heck of a bracket. In case you haven't looked at it, I mean, similar to the League Cap, we talked about having really good talent on both sides of that bracket. The girls will start with Guyman at 6:30 on Thursday night. That Guyman squad, always well coached under Coach Chapman. He's always found a way to keep developing players. And we kind of see them rise up through their years, where you'll see freshmen go, oh, that's a nice player. And by the time they're a senior, you know, they're world beaters. It's kind of happened again. Taz Watson has really taken the mantle for the Lady Tigers. She's had 20 games this season. She's had multiple 30-plus point games. She's been on fire for Guyman. That's going to be a tough one. Also in that bracket for the girls' side, got Kingfisher going against Chisholm to start. Harrod Guthrie's in there. Those are two interesting teams. And then Perkins, Toronto, and Weatherford. So, you know, Weatherford girls is going to be really solid. And, you know, the rest of that field, I think, is going to be looking to try to play catch-up with Weatherford.
You know, and talking about Weatherford, we talked to Coach Moore just a couple weeks ago and last week as well, and, you know, these girls want to play Weatherford. The first two times, it seems like they just weren't mentally ready for it, physically ready, and now the pieces have started to move. They have, you know, find to start that groove, and I think Coach Moore, she wants that rematch because she feels like she's going to have a much better performance this time if she can get there.
Yeah, absolutely, and it's kind of set up that way on the bracket for the girls' side. If Woodward beats Guyman, then they would face the winner of the Perkins Toronto Weatherford game. So the opportunity might be there for the girls, to your point. That would be interesting to look at when we get to it. Because like I said, things have kind of started to come together for the Woodward girls, and I think they're filling out. On the boys' side of the bracket, Woodward will start the tournament with Chisholm yet again. So you get the
first
round. The rematch. Yeah, get that rematch straight away. That'll be the nightcap, the 7:50 game for the boys. They'll follow, of course, the girls' game. We'll have both of those on Z92. Other boys' teams in the tournament, Guthrie will face Harrod start. Guyman Keyfisher go at it, and Altus and Perkins Tryon. So no Weatherford boys. Altus steps in there. Otherwise, same bracket. Guthrie and Perkins Tryon, kind of the two to watch out for on that boys' bracket. Guthrie, speaking of Weatherford, lost to Weatherford in their tournament in the finals there, but that was a hard-fought game. And Perkins Tryon really popping off this year in Class 4A. They're going to be tough to beat. And, you know, highly ranked. Have been fluctuating in the top 10 over the last couple weeks. Guthrie, one of the better teams in Class 5A when it comes to the boys' side. So that's going to be kind of the top dogs there. And we'll see if Woodward, you know, has a chance to match up. It's not an easy bracket, that's for sure. All those teams really except Altus and Hara. I mean, those two, you know, are two programs I wouldn't say are easy, but just trying to kind of build up early in the season.
Still find who they really are identity-wise.
Exactly. So otherwise, very stout bracket, I think, you know, top to bottom.
You know, talk about Altus on the bright side. We'll get to see a familiar face.
Yeah,
Coach Whittemore.
If you get the opportunity, you know, depending on how that first round turns out, we, you know, kind of went down there last year and got to visit with him. So that was cool to see, and he's trying to get those boys right as well. So
I know a lot of our, you know, guys that have played for Coach Witt are going to be, you know, excited to, you know, just travel down to Kingfisher and watch his squad perform and, you know, just to talk it up with Coach Witt and, you know, see how things are going. For sure. But first we got to get past tonight, Dakota. Oh, man.
You know, as we're seeing with Hooker, and we know with Hooker obviously being one of the Class Bowl schools, they had a great football season. That was really built off the back of a great track season, where a lot of these names that you'll hear tonight were a part of the track championship for them, the state track championship. So, football season. They were runner-ups of Class A to Fairview, and got to see 2 Northwest teams represent there. And again, a lot of those names that were starting on the football team, you'll see in the basketball side. The girls program the last few years has absolutely been fantastic under Coach Stalder. Holly Stalder was a big-time player for him. She graduated, so this team kind of trying to find their identity in the wake of losing to Holly Stalder, but they were a state qualifier last year. They played a really tough schedule to start this year, and they're finding the way. So we'll, of course, get more of that here in just a minute.
You know, Tyler, right before we take a break, you talked about that track and field for Hooker. You know, in the gymnasium, you look over here, there's 12 banners just from 2014 to 2023 now. That's pretty impressive.
Yeah, no, it is. Folks, if you don't think, you know, athletes run track and field or do track and field, you're mistaken. You know, generally a lot of the best athletes, you know, they say, hey, make sure at the high school level you're doing track and field because it will make you better. Teaches a lot about, you know, your body endurance and more importantly the mental side too. I mean, you're fighting not only your other runners, but mentally you're fighting through, you know, that pain, that consistency. So it teaches a lot of great things like other sports do. And, you know, Hooker, man, they've got a lot of things going right, you know, across their programs right now. So a lot of great coaches. Obviously, you know, talk about football, Trevor Powers, we've had him at the Class Bowl a couple years ago. Really intelligent coach. And, you know, you look to the boys team, Todd Kerr, a long time name, a good coach, athletic director up here as well as the boys coach. And then we mentioned Coach Stalder, the girls basketball side, has developed some really good talent. So they've got kind of everything aligned. It'll be interesting to see how the Boomers handle that challenge tonight.
And with that, we're going to take a break. When we come back, we will have the matchup, Woodward versus Hooker Bulldogs. You're listening to Boomer Basketball on Z92.
You tackle an endless to-do list every day. It may seem like a thankless job, but you know better. It's the little things that matter most. That's why you'll appreciate the enduring value of the Michelin Defender tire. Designed for doers like you, Michelin's longest-lasting tire keeps you on the go longer, so you have one less thing to worry about on your next road trip. Stop in today for miles of uncompromised safety and performance. Visit your local Michelin dealer, High Plains Tire, at 2220 Main in Woodward. Attention Expo Farm Expo exhibitors. Booth space is now available. It's the K101 Z92 Home and Agribusiness Trade Show, and it's coming to the Woodward County Event Center and Fairgrounds April 5th, 6th, and 7th. Now in our 40th year, this show features 2 exhibitor buildings, plus outdoor exhibitor space, and will host an extensive variety of agriculture and farm equipment. Also, home improvement ideas, clothing, communication, and entertainment products, ATVs, lawn and garden, new and used automobiles, plus arts and crafts, and great food vendors. Thousands annually rely on Expo Farm Expo to see a wide variety and selection of products and services that only a show of this size can offer. Booth space is now available by calling 580-256-4101. That's 580-256-4101. Don't miss out. Reserve your space today for the Tri-State's largest spring home and farm show and be part of Expo Farm Expo 2024. Coming to the Woodward County Fairgrounds Friday, Saturday, and Sunday, April 5th, 6th, and 7th. It's food, folks, and fun with K101.
And welcome back to Boomer Basketball on Z92. Dakota Wagner, Tyler Ridge with you as we're going to take a little bit at this Boomer team as they have faced some top-tier opponents like number 4 in Class 4A Anadarko, number 7 in Class 4A Glenpool, and number 15 in 4A Weatherford. Man, this Boomer team on the girls' side and boys' side especially have played some very good opponents, you know, to start the season, and that's just kind of building you up, you know, throughout the season for that postseason.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And that's a great point because you look back at that schedule like you're talking about, and it's just been chock full of teams that have routinely been, you know, either state qualifiers, area finalists, you know, dragging in 20-plus wins. And we talked about a little bit with the Chisholm tournament. Perry, it was that. You mentioned Anadarko, Weatherford, good examples, and as well as Glenpool. You know, this is, I mean, when you face a tough schedule like that to start, and, you know, we see a lot of teams do it, that could sink or swim you a little bit. You know, you got to have the right mentality as a team to tackle a tough early schedule because it's going to put you in some situations. There's going to be some nights where it's simply not your night, you know, against some of those tough teams. And we've seen that for these Woodward girls, but Dakota, as you mentioned a minute ago, we've also seen, I think, a lot of growth. You know, you go back to the week capital tournament, and you look at that, you had a different girl lead scoring each night. You know, whether it was Riley Moore day 1 with the 18 points, Riley Douglas Fisher in day 2, 18 again, and then Lexi Mendel had 19 in day 3. And, you know, with 3 different scores like that, you think, man, this is a really well-balanced team. Surely, you know, they get some nods on top of the consolation championship. Didn't get any all-tournament team members, so that was kind of crazy that didn't happen. You know, the fact that you didn't get any all-tournament team members. But, again, I think, you know, as we talked about with Coach Moore last week during the coaches show, she's really liking where this team is at in terms of saying, hey, you know, we're tough to defend because you can't shut down just one person and shut down this team. I mean, you've seen it, Dakota, where there's been nights where, okay, Riley Moore doesn't have her game going, right? Maybe she's in foul trouble or something like that. Riley Douglas Fisher steps up. Maybe it's like Sue Mendel. We've seen Jocelyn and Therese be a nice support player as a senior in this team, be a perimeter threat. She's leading the show as the point guard. Then you get performances even off the bench. Girls like Kaylee Coate that have given big minutes. Michelle Barra, Lily Luckett. All those girls, you know, have really come together. And when you're, you know, eight deep or so for Coach Moore, I think she really likes the spot this team's at.
You know, and you were talking about that Chisholm tournament that they were in, and you know, I wasn't there because I was at the Oil Center Classic, but you know, listening to those girls and getting to watch that stream that they had, those girls seemed like they, in day 2, although you know you had a close one in day 1, in day 2 it seems like they kind of had a little bit chip on their shoulder going into that one. And I know that Coach Moore really wanted to get that day 1, but man, in day 2 really popped off, found their, you know, stride, and then in day 3 I believe is when Keely Cope had a couple of threes in that game, and man, you know, they brought home that hardware. But like you said, they're starting to come together, starting to find some players, like young players. Kaylee Mills that has stepped up.
Yeah, I didn't even mention Kaylee Mills. She's been in a starting role. As you know, we went from not having a lot of size last year and depth there to now you got Riley, you got Michelle, you got Kaylee, and that's 4 girls that are really solid at what they do. So that part has changed. I think it's really helped out, you know, the depth of this Woodward team because you're multiple. You know, you can play inside out. When you do that, you're tough to defend.
Oh, yeah, you've had players step up all year like Lexi Mendel, Michelle Labar, really 2 that stick out to me. And then boomers that have been veterans on the court like Riley Douglas Fisher and Riley Moore, as well as Jocelyn Therese, kind of working those pieces together. I'm kind of curious to see how they're going to match up against the 6-4 Lady Bulldog team.
Yeah, you know, and when you look at this Hooker team, I mentioned a minute ago, kind of moving on from Holly Stalder, who was a fantastic player for the last 4 years for this Hooker team, had really been a big piece. But there's still some returning faces, girls like Isabel Neville, you know, Devery Metcalf, Allie Metcalf. Those are going to be some girls that you'll see be good contributors for the squad. And they're just going to be fundamentally sound. And that's what Coach Stalder's teams do, where they're going to break you down, you know, and they're going to pick at your weaknesses. I remember, you know, a couple years ago being up here, kind of similar to what Woodward is right now, where they know they're constantly having to work on being able to face and break the press, right? That was something that Hooker really dismantled with 2 years ago because Coach Staller instantly saw on film and took to it. And, you know, similar to this year, how does Woodward respond, right? That's going to be something I guarantee you Hooker's going to try to do early in this game is get out and try to press Woodward, try to force him to make the right decisions. And I think over the last couple of weeks, or at least since the start of the new year, we've really seen the girls put a big focus on that and try to improve on that. I think a lot of progress was made in the Week Capital Tournament. Would have liked to see him against Clinton to continue to try to improve on that. Didn't get the opportunity, but I think tonight will be a good point to do so because although this Hooker team's still good, it's just not quite what they've been the last couple of years. So maybe an opportunity to exercise and compete, you know, and execute at a high level. That's what you want to do. And the Woodward girls feel confident in that. They all seem like they feel like they've got the talent to compete with just about anybody. We talked about them wanting to face Weatherford again, right? That's part of that. So I think it'll be exciting down the stretch to really watch this team.
Well, you know, we talked about things that the Boomers have done differently and better, you know, to start out the 2024 year. And, you know, talking with Coach Moore on the coaches show last Wednesday, I asked her, I said, hey, Coach Moore, you know, what's something this team has really improved on from the beginning of the year, you know, to now? And she said, fundamentally, you know, our fundamentals have been gotten way better.
Yeah.
I mean, she said that's a weird thing to say, you know, going into almost the middle of the season to say that you have fundamentally gotten better as a team. But that's the thing that you would like to see is the Boomers get fundamentally better because a lot of things were kind of iffy at the beginning of the season. They get cleaned up. the start of the new year, and they're kind of on the right track to not success, but a better success than what they've had for the season.
Well, and I think is what it comes down to. We talk a lot about Thesley this year, even though she's graduated.
Yeah.
And girls like Avery Edwards that were just so supremely athletic, right? So good at just being able to go out there, roll the balls out, and they just from as soon as they pick them up, they're an impact, right? Especially as seniors, their speed, their athleticism was really tough to deal with for a lot of teams. So it created, and Coach Moore, be honest with you, she's like, it's not so much that you don't think about the fundamentals, but when you have to play a certain style because you know that style is successful because you just have the athletes to do it, it almost makes the fundamentals not necessarily on the back burner, but it's not as much as the focus. Now you go to a team that, yes, they've still got good athletes. Don't get me wrong. Bradley Dose Fisher, fantastic. Jocelyn Treese, good. Kaylee Mills, as a freshman, has really popped off both basketball and softball. And you talk about Lacey Mendel has a bright future as well. A lot of those girls can still compete athletically. It's just you don't have that one go-to player now. So then the fundamentals have to work because you have to really work as a team. And that's kind of what Coach Moore is talking about, right? Like, you have to develop that side of it now. And they're making great progress on that. So, again, it'll be test tonight. And in front of this really, really big-time crowd, we got the Hooker Band right beside us. They brought out the band. It's homecoming, going through some of those festivities right now. So it's going to be a packed house. How can you handle that tough road environment?
You were talking about how the girls really don't have that set-in-stone score. But as you mentioned it, we've seen Lexi Mendel pop off, Riley Moore, Riley Douglas Fisher, and, we've seen a credible amount of help, I'd say, from the bench and Michelle Ibarra and a couple others, and just the effort that these girls have been putting in, because I know it's a hard season. I know that, you lose your two best defenders in graduation, and Avery Edwards and Thesley Pfeiffer, like you were mentioning, but just to see the effort that they have put in this season so far and how their fight has just been getting stronger and stronger each week, it seems like, just impresses me.
Yeah, and a lot of that goes to, we talked about, obviously last year, Coach Gaines is still a lot of those girls, Briley and O'Reilly from a post perspective, and Michelle for that matter, and just their confidence. But now you bring in, to replace Coach Gaines, a great coach for another coach. I mean, Coach Gaines obviously had the big-time player experience and has had her coaching moments as well. And it's now, heading up the boys' side. But you bring in a legend, Coach Casey Jones, guy that you want to talk about, seen it all, done it all, probably forgot more basketball than, what most people know.
Yeah.
Coach Moore really credits him to being almost an easer, right? Because he's reminding them, hey, it's not about start of the year. It's not about necessarily even the middle of the year. It's how you're playing towards the postseason, and just get them in that mindset of understanding, hey, we got to keep building. Every day it's building, right? You're just trying to build on momentum, build on what you did from the previous day. So I think you've really taken that mindset and done a pretty good job of doing that.
Well, you talked about Casey Jones right there, and you talk about him. He's had experience from different levels, from class 4A, 5A to the lower schools, Vi, Cy, and Arnett.
Yeah, he's seen it all, man.
And not only has he seen it all in basketball, you mean softball, and it seems like couple other things, maybe baseball as well. I think
helped out on the softball side this year with Coach Dauphin, who wanted to bring him over, and we saw the rewards there reaped because that was a great softball season as well for these girls. So.
But with that, we're going to take a break, and when we come back, we'll break down the Lady Bulldogs record and roster a little bit, and a couple other things as they are still having their homecoming festivities. You are listening to Boomer Basketball on Z92.
People investing in people. That's what they're all about at Great Plains Bank, because life isn't a transaction, it's a journey. And on that journey, we're greater together. Great Plains Bank has locations in your local area because they're here to serve you. Great Plains Bank, member FDIC, equal housing lender. When you want the best pricing and no gimmicks on office supplies, furniture, electronics, and gifts, do yourself a favor. Stop by Divine Stationery and Radio Shack in Woodward at 2121 Oklahoma Avenue or call 580-256-7040. Serving Northwest Oklahoma since 1939.
More than 600,000 Oklahomans have disabilities. We can't afford to leave great employees behind just because they do things differently.
Who we are and what we accomplish
are much more important.
Hire an Oklahoman with a disability and gain dependability, commitment, and lower turnover. Reach out. Oklahoma Rehabilitation Services, okdrs.gov, 1-800-845-8476.
1 in 4 Americans have a disability. I'm one of them. I'm also a working mom who cares deeply about making sure every child with a disability thrives by getting their access needs met. We've got a trusted ally by our side. Easter Seals provides children and families the foundation for lifelong success through early learning programs, skills training, and prep for college and career. That's my Easter Seals. Make it yours. Join us at easterseals.com.
And welcome back to Boomer Basketball on Z92. Tyler Riggs, Dakota Wagner with you. And Tyler, before we go any a little bit further in our pregame, let's talk a little bit about
let me get in some great sponsors real quick for us. Of course, on Z92, High Plains Tire Gold sponsor of the Boomer Coaches Show, Top Cat Formal Accessories, Great Plains National Bake, Divine Stationery, R5 Customer Embroidery, and Long Shots Bar and Grill, who is our Coaches Show host. Could not do it without them. We greatly thank not only their support of the broadcast, but of course, as well as their support of Woolwich Public Schools. And we again thank you for listening on KMZE 92.3 FM Woodward here tonight, live from Hooker. Also, shout out, of course, to Chris Godwin here representing Boomer TV. So if you're looking to watch the game, you could go to Boomer TV, find that on YouTube, and watch the stream there and listen to us. We got the audio over the top as well, so greatly appreciate that. Always good to have the best of both worlds and see and also hear the ball game.
Oh yeah, it's always nice to, always have, it seems like Boomer TV has been coming with us to games for the last, 3 or 4 years here and there. Yeah. And so, as we're going to talk a little bit about the Lady Bulldogs, they come into a record with 6-4, and they came off a tough road loss, but we'll get to that in here just a minute, as I think you have a little bit about their schedule and
touching on that road loss you were talking about, played Texoma, a really good Texoma girls team. We actually caught up with J.C. Wells in Liberal, Kansas, as we were up there for that game. He was up there kind of taking it all in, and he's with the Texoma squads, and was real excited about the possibility for the girls and what they could do down the stretch. Obviously, the boys decent as well, and the girls got that win for Texoma 58-49 against Hooker. And you look up and down the schedule for Hooker, Dakota, 6-4 is a little deceiving, right?
Yeah.
They played Ripley, nearly top 10 team in Class A, beat them in the Garber tournament. Then they ultimately finished fourth in the Garber tournament because they lose to Cashin and Perry, back-to-back games. Cashin, top 10 team in 2A, also we know what Perry is in 3A. And then you get a little bit of a win streak against Moreland, Garden City, Turpin. Go to the Merritt tournament, finish runners up there as they beat Mangum, beat top 10 Canute, top 10 Class A. Fell short against the host Merritt, who's really good into a top 10 there as well. And they had that Texoma game. So, only 3 teams that they've played have been unranked, whether that's through 3A, 2A, or Class A. And, similar to what we were talking about for the Woodward girls, you play a schedule like that, you're going to grow from it. I mean, it doesn't matter if you win them all or lose them all. You're going to grow from just having to go through those tough games and those tough teams. I mean, that's some real talent that you got to take on and figure out, hey, how do we compete in these games? How do we move forward? So now they're on a little bit of a losing streak after having that win streak and trying to, find their way again against Woodward tonight. The Laverne game, we talked about that. They were supposed to play Laverne before they played Woodward, but that got delayed due to the weather. So
you talked
would have been another good squad.
You talked a little bit about J.C. Wells, being a part of that coaching staff for the Red Devils, and they got the win, 58-49. I believe it was here at Hooker,
right?
And that's a tough home loss against a very well Red Devil team.
Yeah, but you grow from it. Coach Stalder, we talked about his ability to develop talent. He goes through a loss like that and is really able to put into the girls, how to improve and grow from it. It sounds like an easy thing, but in coaching, it's not always easy to be able to do that properly. You go through a tough home loss or, a tough tournament loss, maybe, like we're talking about the Mayor tournament, you come up runner-up. It's a little bit of a downswing, so you got to be able to keep your team, up on that and take the good from the bad and improve on the bad and go from there. And Coach Stalder is quite frankly one of the better ones at it. That's why the girls have been so successful. Mentioned they were a state tournament team last year, lost against Dale, who was absolutely outstanding in the quarterfinals. but they kind of went through some of those moments last year. 19-8, they weren't winning every game, right? They were winning a lot, but they had some of those moments of adversity and fought through and got better for it. So that is what they do, and that's what kind of makes them special, especially out here in Hooker, as we are crowning the king and queen. It looks like for Hooker, the boys' side of things, it was Omar Gomez, the senior, getting crowned the king. So
congratulations to him.
Yeah, we'll see him a little bit later on tonight. Going to be, the Hooker squad, and we'll talk about later, Dakota, to use your line. We were talking about off air. They were a little younger than what you would think for the record, but they've got a mix of a couple of solid seniors as well as a lot of junior, sophomore, and freshman talent.
Tyler, you're talking about, that little bit about that game versus Texhoma there. Texhoma, got out to an early lead versus Hooker. I think it was about 20-point lead there in that second quarter, and then over the next 2 quarters, it seems like Hooker was, just trying to scrap their way back in that one. It was a 9-point game at the end of that one, but man, this Hooker team, when they need to come back essentially in a way against a team, they put on a fight, come back and try to get that win.
Well, and that's a good point, right? That's going to be a team that never gives up, never says die. Doesn't matter if they're down 20, 30, whatever. They're going to find a way to stay in it and keep you honest. So, and I'm sure, Coach Moore, Coach Jones has talked about that to the girls and what they do, well in that sense. So even if the girls get out to a good lead tonight, let's say you start fast, right? Start fast on the road, you can't count out the Hooker Lady Bulldogs, as they will be tough to deal with throughout, no matter what. So
I know Coach Moore is definitely going to want to get a fast early start to this Hooker game, but we'll take a break and come back and talk a little bit more about that. You are listening to Boomer Basketball on Z92.
Dear Vet Ticks, it was nice to spend the night with my daughter and other veterans. It's so humbling to attend an event when you feel appreciated.
I had a wonderful time with my family. Thank you for the memories, Vet Ticks.
Dear Vet Ticks, thank you for a great experience and for your support of the military and veterans.
Thank you so much, Vet Ticks. Our family has gone through a lot the last few years, and this gave us a nice break.
Every empty seat at a concert, game, or special event is a missed opportunity to say thank you to a veteran or a service member. By giving your extra tickets to Vet Ticks, you'll help America's heroes reduce stress, family bonds, and create a truly happy memory that will last a lifetime. So when you really want to say thank you for your service, give the experience, give the memory. Vet Ticks.
And thanks to our donors and supporters, this life-changing gift of freedom is provided mortgage-free to the say.org and help build homes and rebuild lives.
Have, made that trip to Hooker, and let's go over to the keys to the game here for the Boomers over the top of this Lady Bulldogs team, as they're going to come out with a fight early.
A second ago, the focus is going to be on how you start this game. For Woodward again, so great for that. The Hooker team is going to be wanting to be sharp in front of a good home crowd and that environment. So you got to be ready for that early. Handle that. How can you respond to that? We'll be able to,
I think we are going to talk a little bit about the keys to the game for the Bulldogs. Talking a little bit about these players. Number 0, Isabella Neville. She can get to the 3-point line. She's a shooter. And that's going to be the main shooter in my eyes for this Lady Bulldogs team. You're also going to basket against traffic. And then there's Ruben Hernandez, number 10. She's good underneath the basket. She can establish herself to put back those shots that come off the top of the rim. And she's just a pretty good paint player.
With the Hooker team is something that makes it, tough to match levels, right? Whether that's a good outside perimeter threat, you talk about Neville, you talk you get to the net, and so she can attack from that perimeter, and that creates those drive and kick scenarios for Neville, or so, and then you factor in, both Devery Metcalf and Allie Metcalf. Those are also, two solid players in their own right. That starting lineup is good throughout. I think probably the biggest thing for Hooker is how's their depth, right? This may be one of those scenarios where Woodward, from a depth standpoint, gets that edge. I think that's something to watch as we get into this matchup. Because we talked about with our girls, you know, you're seeing the emergence of Michelle Barr. You're seeing the emergence of Lily Luckett, Keely Cope. Cope had a great week tournament where she was in spots, whether it was Douglas Fit the first and last, where she got some big three-pointers. You know, she made some good decisions on assists. So they're playing with confidence off the bench. Factor in the youth, a girl like Kaylee Mills, that when she gets rolling, she's tough to stop. Lexi Mendel, sophomore, they just play with that. You know, something you will have to be able to do tonight for these teams. That established, right? What can you do to be able to say, okay, hey, we take care of
about their depth and their bench, Tyler. They went from about, I'd say, 6 players that could, you know, Coach Moore was playing to now Coach Moore has extended that number to about 8 players, occasionally 9 if you're lucky. So it's good to see that Coach Moore has been able to push this roster a little bit more in depth and get her girls involved. I know that she was kind of hesitant at first just because of their experience and just not being able to have that experience because of not having so many JV games. But hey, she's made it work, and this Boomer team is starting to, you know, feel like they're on a little bit of a roll here.
Yeah, no, absolutely. You know, and it'll be, how do you keep that momentum? You've been off for a week, right? That could be a good thing because you get to look at some things. They didn't have a big-time winter break.
You can prep for this game.
You can, but you also don't get to play against that live competition like you thought you would.
Your body's
right
off a little bit too much, I'd say.
Yeah.
You know, but the positive thing, you know, you take a look. The Boomers are coming into this one with a 2-game win streak, and those are both from the
week
capital.
Yep.
But, you know, 2-game win streak, you know, hoping to push it to 3, but both teams they have 6 wins on the season. The Boomers just have 2 more losses because they played 2 more games. And I'm kind of curious to see how this Boomer team is going to square up against this Lady Bulldog team.
Well, and, you know, speaking of Lady Bulldogs and Hooker for that matter, some that we'll be covering later in the week on K101 Dakota. We'll have the coverage, but the Shack Shootout upcoming. And that's the Thursday, Friday, Saturday. Same as when the Buckle the Wheat Belt's going on in Kingfisher. We'll have both of those. The evening games in the Shack Shootout and some great teams in that one. Obviously, the host Shack. Hooker will be there, both boys and girls. Should be very good. Forgan, both sides will be there. The Woodward JV boys will actually be there as well. So that'll be interesting to see how they square up in that one. You know, and I heard that from Coach Gaines this past week that the Woodward boys, JV-wise, will play Hooker to start the tournament. Boys City in there, Balco, Sayre, Visay. So pretty good lineup. Hooker, I think, kind of goes into that tournament maybe as the favorite, right? So we're going to look to do. They're kind of the only bigger school other than the Woodward JV boys in there. Sayre has been solid, you know, in the past as well, so they could be decent. But I think Hooker, if you're just looking at it from the bracket standpoint, they're going to be the favorite, you know, on the boys' side for sure, and quite possibly on the girls' side, although obviously not quite as easy on the girls' side, I think, with those teams. But so they're going to be trying to tune up as well. That will be interesting. Like I said, we'll have that coverage on K101. KKNA will have that come. Always a fun tournament and a great environment. Man, you want to talk about a good environment. Shattuck, I mean, beautiful. CJ calls it the Taj Mahal as it was built. So they've got a good facility to work with.
Undefeated on the season, the boys are, so it's going to be an interesting matchup for them going into that. They're undefeated tonight, Tyler. So far.
And we get in a little. But of course, we'll talk about more as we get into the boys' game. But just as we were talking about off air, you know, this broadcast, a lot of the names that you'll hear tonight